I'm not producer Mike, and that's what you get when you do a live show. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and if you're joining us live on Facebook, welcome. You will notice that we are joined by one Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing wonderful, man. It's a good day. And we are joined once again by Mr. Josh Gertler, fan favorite. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Also a very good day.
And your mic's not right here next to your beard anymore, so it should be a great show.
Okay.
And as we get going, we're not going to bury the lead here, right? 4-1 Flyers. Huge game against the Boston Bruins. And the Flyers played really good hockey. I'm not going to lie. I'm supremely excited about what I saw this afternoon, this evening. Kevin, break down for us what you saw early on here.
You know, I thought the first period wasn't the best for either side. I thought the first little bit maybe was a feeling out process. Boston had a few good shots on goal early in the game. And then all of a sudden it was like, you know, it was that typical first period, maybe survival mode that the Flyers go in sometimes. And then in the second period, it was like a switch flipped. And they come out with that energy. They come out starting to get the better of the scoring chances. And then you leave it to a couple of your youngest guys to make some big plays. You know, Travis Sanheim with a good setup on Raffles' goal to start the scoring. You let that carry through for a little bit. The fourth line playing as well as I think I've seen them in a while, you know. And granted, it's been a while since we've watched live hockey, don't get me wrong. But, you know, I think the last person I expected to score a goal today was Nate Thompson. And he just comes through with a big goal at a really big time. And
Flyers legend Nate Thompson.
Yeah,
He's in the books now.
But I think
the graphic made up, didn't you?
I've had it from the day after he got traded, or not really, I shouldn't say that, like the day after he played in his first game, and I had a picture that I could use. But I will say this. Yeah, but I will say this about because Alain Vigneault talked about this after the game, and I do want to throw this out there because I agreed with him. The third period, the way that they came out and really didn't let up at all in that third period and seemed to just shut them down. That said a lot to me. I mean, Boston looked like they should have been able to come out and start to turn things a little bit. I thought back to the game. Oh my God, it was way back in November, I think. It was mid-November.
12 years ago, right?
Yeah, right. But it was the Flyers led that game 2-0, and then the third period was this hanging on for dear life, and finally Boston tied it up, and it was the first game they won in a shootout. It was the Flyers' first win in a shootout against that team this year, and it felt like that was – I thought that might be what was going to happen down the stretch of this game. And instead, I think for 16 minutes, Boston had 2 shots in the third period. And then they finally, once they pulled the goalie, here came the shots. But that makes a lot of sense. It's the fact that they really didn't get anything for 15, 16 minutes of the third period. That was so impressive to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Josh, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, just an inspiring game. I mean, I didn't look too much into what the Bruins did the other day, but I think they were flat, right?
Yeah, and they come out and go down 3-0 to Columbus in the first period. Never really found their footing in that game. Honestly, I mean, you didn't lose in the first 10 minutes of the game like you did against Columbus, but Boston didn't do themselves any favors in this game in terms of bouncing back. They never really had that push.
Yeah.
So I guess they plugged that early defensive hole because the Flyers didn't score on them. But
it was kind of like a lot of games this season, though, right? Kind of like a back and forth feeling out first period, and then the team just kind of picks up second, third period.
Oh, the Flyers, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the MO, right? You spend the first period figuring out what the opponent's doing, kind of learning the game plan, figuring out the tendencies, and then this team made adjustments better than any Flyers team I've seen in a very long time throughout games. Just in the second period, you saw at a certain point in the second period, Alain Vigneault figured out who needed to be playing with who, and then boom, chemistry, magic. And he was fantastic at that. He found the right line combination. He found the right strategy call. He found the right defensive pairing, the right switch to make. And he didn't necessarily need to do it today, but the players stepped up, and that's always nice to see.
Well, think about the lineup decisions, right? I mean, that would be probably one of the first things to talk about, right? No Farabee.
No. We talked about Nate Thompson getting in there in that spot.
Thompson's in, right? And then Loughton up top. And Loughton scores.
Scott Lawton had a fantastic game.
Scott Lawton, yeah, he's really a fit on that second line more than people want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be a bulldog in these playoffs.
He's got a lot. The thing that people are going to undervalue with him is he's got a lot more experience in the playoffs now than people want to give him credit for. Or
he's been around a couple of times.
He's been around twice for this now, and yes, that first go around, it got cut short for him because he suffered that injury that knocked him out for the rest of the series against Washington. But nonetheless, he's played.
He was there. He was in the dance. He prepped for it,
and he was a good player. He was a pretty solid player, all things considered, in that Pittsburgh series from a couple of years back. He had a good series.
Yeah.
It just comes down to he keeps growing into this role more and more. And I'll tell you something about the lineup that still continuously impresses me because it's been talked about for a while. Alain Vigneault hasn't changed the defensive pairings at all since camp started. He hasn't changed them at all. The second pairing of Sanheim and Myers was getting a lot of attention, and every assistant coach talked about how they're willing to give them those big time situations. And we're talking in this particular game, you're talking putting them on the ice with Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak at times.
Yeah.
And giving them and saying they have
confidence. Let's rewind
though.
Like when was the last time we had different pairings, right? Besides Ghost coming in for like a game or whatever.
Well, when Myers went out with an injury toward the end of before the pause, that was probably the last time there was a change, and I think they kept them the same for about. So, I asked Alain Vigneault about this the other day, and he said he's liked it for the last 20 games, and 20 games, I think,
and that spans about 8 months at this point.
Right.
Well, what was it? Was it like 10 weeks or something like that of the same pairings before Myers got injured?
It was pretty long. It was a long,
It was a long stretch. It was stability.
And the key was.
When's the last time the Flyers had that kind of stability in the defensive core?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really saying something,
and it's good stability too.
Yeah, it's really saying something, and I think both Alain Vigneault and Mike Yeo have said stuff about this before. When Shane Gostisbehere is the guy who's struggling to get into the picture, he's your seventh defenseman, and
still want him in.
4 years ago, 5 years, 5 years ago, he was a Calder finalist. 3 years ago, he was one of the top point-producing defensemen in the league.
If I rewind 18 months and tell you that Robert Hagg just played a virtual playoff game over Shane Gostisbehere when both are completely healthy, you'd laugh in my face.
Yeah, probably. I mean...
And I tell you, Haxtell's still coach, too.
Yeah, you're probably right. Happy birthday, Dave, by the way. It was yesterday. Happy birthday, Dave. I know you're watching this.
That clip was
funny. But either way, you know what I saw in this game? I saw a team ready to win playoff games.
No, yeah.
They come out in the third period, and you're up. Was it 2-1 after, or was it 3-1?
No, it was 3-1 because Myers scored 8
right,
seconds
Myers scored
after
right
Wagner's
at the end of the
goal.
period. Right.
Yeah.
And you come out 3-1. You just broke Boston's back with a quick response at the end of the second period. And you don't come out and lay back and dump and chase and blah, blah, blah. They not only played normal, they were playing aggressively. They were playing an active physical forecheck, actively trying to get in there. And it looked like they were preparing to wear Boston down over a 7-game series. Like, that's what that looks like.
Yeah.
And
playing a big, heavy physical team.
And you're right. Exactly. You're not playing a smaller team with speed and skill, blah, blah, blah. This is a mean Boston Bruins team, right? This is Charlie McAvoy, who doesn't get enough credit in this regard. You got Zdeno Chara, you got Bergeron, you got some miles on these guys.
They're President's Trophy winners, right?
Yep.
And this Flyers team just put a pace on them for probably 45, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's we talk about the layoff, talk about a slow start, whatever you want to call it. The Flyers are 1/3 of the way to being the first seed in the East.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're talking.
Exactly.
And if you win one of your remaining 2, you're probably a top 2 seed, and you're guaranteed home ice through the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, pretty much.
And what did you guys think about the Farabee decision? Like, did you just kind of blind trust in Vigneault because of the pulse he has in the team, or?
I'm willing to bet that Joel Farabee plays at least one, probably both of the remaining 2 round robin games.
Well, we'll probably get into the reason why a little later, because I think he's going to play them regardless of whether or not it was going to come down to a decision or not. I think the decision was probably made for them anyway. But I get it, because everybody wants to focus on the fact, because everybody likes the kid, everybody likes Farabee, and everybody wants the scoring touch in there. I think that the reason that they keep sticking to Thompson a little bit is the veteran presence because he has playoff experience. He's been on long playoff runs before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they don't want to give Farabee that kind of time on the fourth line. I don't think they want to waste his time with here you go. Here's 5 minutes a game potentially if it's needed. I think he would have a different role.
At this
I was
point,
thinking about that though. Yeah, like
at this
there's
point
no
in the season,
AHL.
at this point in the season, I don't care about Joel Farabee's development. I care about putting the best team on the ice to win the Stanley Cup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess it's different too because you don't have the ability to just send him back somewhere and say, here, go play the 20 minutes that you would have gotten instead. I get that. I still don't think they want to utilize him in that particular setting.
If he's better 6 minutes a night than Nate Thompson is, he should be in the lineup.
Yeah. But then the big question is if Loughton's a better center or wing, right? Who plays 4C?
Man. Well, that's the other part of it because at that point in time, if you took Thompson out of that fourth line in with the rest of the lineup in its current state, you don't have a natural center playing in the fourth line. That's the problem.
Yeah, and they like him. I think what bothers me is they like Loughton kind of like left wing too, right? Like you wish that he could.
They really
play
like
right
him.
They like him on the wing for sure.
Yeah, I wish he could play right wing because we seemed a little too heavy on the left side.
Yeah.
Right?
I really like the way Lawton flies around out there as a wing. Like when he's a center, he plays a nice tight, you hear the phrase 200-foot game, but he does. He grinds you out. He plays a good, but on the wing, when he gets to play, when he gets to shoot the puck, you can tell he's having a little more fun out there as a lot of players. You see that out of a lot of players, right? You saw that happen out of Claude Giroux a couple of years ago. You flip him over to wing and boom, the scoring's back.
Yeah. Like true talent, I'd like him on the third line. And Albay Kubel or Pitlick on the fourth line, right? If
putting him on your second line means that JVR is on your third, or wherever you end up, one of JVR, Travis Konechny, Jacob Voracek, somebody great is going to end up on the third line. So I honestly, it's insane to say, but we've talked a lot about this depth of this team.
Yeah,
they have a clear first line. And then after that, everybody's pretty good. Like there's shades of gray here, but there's not a ton of skill difference between the second and the third or the third and the fourth. Like it's a pretty tight forward core.
It is.
I love JVR in the third line. I love
JVR in the third line.
Well, it's because it's where he fits better now in his career. You would have taken him on a second line 5 years ago. Now,
even in Toronto, I mean, even before he left, they were cutting his minutes like 17, 16, 15, and they were getting the same production with a minute less a game all season.
Give that minute to somebody else and spread the love a little. I
mean, that was good. One good thing about that talk, I guess.
Right, and here's the thing with that grouping anywhere, putting him on your third line. It says a lot when your second power play unit has guys like Kevin Hayes and JVR and that speaks to your depth too. When who you want on your top power play, which is going to be the top three that have been the top three since camp started, Giroux, Voracek, Couturier. You put Konechny out there because Konechny's got the scoring touch on the team, probably better than anybody, just about. And then Provorov's the defenseman who only was tied for the league lead in power play goals among defensemen this year. Then you go to the second pairing, and it's, Niskanen and Sanheim are the two on the back end, which not a bad pairing to put together either. Niskanen, it keeps everybody in their natural positions. Sanheim's on the left side, Niskanen's on the right. And then Hayes, JVR, and I mean, you can pick from a array of players who you would want to put in the other spot on the power play. I mean, you can really kind of take your pick because you could make it Lawton. You could make it Albay Kubel. You could, you pick one of these guys who, Lawton and Albay Kubel are two guys who had really good scoring junior numbers. So it's in their game. It's just that they also have adjusted to the roles they needed to have to stay in the lineup for all these years. I think you're starting to see it with Lawton, where the promotion to higher minutes and bigger responsibility can lead to more goals. And that's where it comes down. I think that's what it comes down to for him.
And I think we forget a lot of times that Scott Lawton was a first-round pick.
Well,
he's got that scoring talent. He's when Sean Couturier hadn't started putting up 30-goal seasons yet, when he was still, putting up 35 points, and he was kind of in the, the offensive doldrums of his career, as we say.
Right.
I looked at him kind of where Scott Lawton is. I wanted him to be Scott Lawton. I'm like, okay, cool. He'll go up and down the lineup. He's good defensively. He's a great 3C. And obviously the 30-goal seasons came, and he's, he's got a decent shot at winning the Selke this year, and he's really starting to get some league recognition. But rewind 5 years ago, before these seasons started, all I wanted him to be was Scott Lawton. He's way outstripped that. I'm grateful for it. But all I wanted him to be is what Scott Lawton is. So the fact that we get that player and also 30-goal scoring Sean Couturier, come on, I'm thrilled. They basically signed that version of Sean Couturier in an alternate timeline, and it's Scott Lawton.
Well, a couple years ago, what did we say? Lawton is a fourth line center on a contender, right, or a cup winning team.
Yeah.
Now he's beyond that. I mean, if he's on our fourth line, it's almost like a waste. Like he's a great third liner. Yeah.
Right.
Scott Lawton, it's funny. I'm starting to hear his name a little bit on the panel shows, right? They'll come to the Flyers and they'll talk about Giroux and they'll talk about Couturier. And then when they talk about a dark horse player to watch, they'll talk about Scott Lawton sometimes.
Yeah, they will.
That's new. And that's new. He would have never gotten that 18 months ago. He never and it's really good to see because like you said, Josh, he really has exploded in terms of what he can bring to the team. He's brought the fieriness, he brought the goal scoring.
He had a 40-point pace, right?
Is something like that. He was
roughly,
definitely contributing offensely.
And he missed time this year too. Don't forget too.
Right.
Yeah, he broke his finger or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. And I believe, was that in the Ottawa game?
Oh, yeah. No, the 40-point pace.
And unless you're talking about maybe the first Ottawa game,
that wasn't the game where Brady Tkachuk jumped them and they had that.
No, he didn't get ingered in that game at all. Actually,
I thought he got injured at the end when Tkachuk was punching him on the ground.
No, he broke his finger the same way. There was a couple of them that happened that way. I think it happened blocking a shot. I don't think it actually happened.
Yeah.
I don't remember that one. Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Rafa went out, then Lawton went out.
But either way, for me, the coming out party for Scott Lawton was that Ottawa game. Right?
For sure, yeah.
He played that fantastic game. He was chirping Brady Tkachuk the whole game. He was living in his head. He had Brady Tkachuk's number that whole game. At the end of the game, the Ottawa Senators are down by a goal. They're about to pull the goalie, and Brady Tkachuk mugs him and takes a bad penalty.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing where
45-point pace, actually. Not 40, 45.
Right.
And we're really talking pace, Josh, huh?
Yeah, right.
But either way,
would you have expected that 2 years ago out of him, though?
No, definitely
no,
not.
Probably not.
I
was looking at him at 18 to 22. He was the type of guy, fourth line production guy.
He was the type of guy who I used to sit there and say that he was the type of guy who would accidentally score 10 goals a year.
Most of
an empty netter here, in addition to one of these greasy goals or whatever. He backed his way into 10 for right. Well, not even the shorthanded ones I'll call more earned. I'm saying here's an empty net goal that you were out there at the end really just trying to kill off the 6-on-5 that you get, and you were the one who got to shoot on the empty net. Good for you.
Sure.
And it helps pad the numbers. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you're like, he's not the goal scoring type even in that situation. And I feel like it's totally different now because he had 13 this year. He took a 4.5 month pause like the rest of them did, and has 2 really big goals that were not scored the same way per se, but they had shooters touch all over them. Both of them did.
Scott Lawton goal today was pretty. That goal was pretty. You could not have picked a better spot for that.
Look, I appreciated the Scott Lawton goal because I thought that they passed up a little bit too often on those odd man rush situations.
Kevin Hayes, I'm looking at you.
I don't even remember his.
That extra pass in front of the net.
Well, that wasn't the odd man rush situation. It was a play in front of the net that I thought he should have shot there. Yeah. No, the one that I'm thinking of is Giroux in the first period.
Okay.
Giroux had one coming up the wing and tried to pass to Raffle out of the box, and he's the one with the shot angle there. You got to just let her rip.
They were getting a little cute.
That bugged me.
Yeah, but it was funny because I think in looking back at the Lawton goal there for a minute, Konechny's the one with him, and Konechny almost drifted toward the center as if to say, I'm not going to be all the way on the right side here waiting for it. Just take it. And Lawton looked at him once, saw where he was, and then just went, nope, and looked straight at the net the rest of the way and took the shot. And perfect placement.
Great communication, even if it's nonverbal between the two of them. They got the message across. They got the goal.
They do work really well together, though. I mean, I really like the way they work together.
Name a player on the Philadelphia Flyers roster that doesn't work well with Scott Lawton. I'll wait.
Yeah, really. I don't know one. And, Lawton probably – because that was early in the third. I think it was late in the first period. It was right before the Flyers got a power play. He looked like he was going to have one there. I mean, Halak made a great save on him from the slot. and I think it was Hayes who set him up for it. And he had a great scoring chance there that you thought was going to be the icebreaker, and it turned out to not be. But he looked like he had one coming at some point when that happened, and he was buzzing around the net at several different points in time during the game for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of players who are buzzing around the net, and also players that Scott Lawton tends to elevate, let's go ahead and talk about Michael Raffle.
Sure. Yeah.
Michael Raffle scores the opener. Can't say anything bad about it. It's a nice little goal, nice little move. Top shelf.
Flash of brilliance.
That's the Michael Raffle that put up career numbers playing an entire year with Giroux a few years back. That had that offensive ability that you almost forget about when he's playing that low in the lineup.
First line winger Michael Raffle.
Yeah, remember that?
Oh, that was a rough year. I'm not going to lie to you.
And don't get me wrong, he's an undervalued part of the team in the sense that his two-way ability is really good, and you can't undervalue that when you're a fourth line guy who plays really important somewhere in the range of 7 to 10 minutes a game, depending on what the score is, probably. So that can't be undervalued, but I don't think you go in expecting the first goal of your round robin to be Michael Raffle, especially off, with the guys that were out there at the time, and I don't think you expected that to be the case in the first game you played, but I think that's the fourth line doing this. What do we keep hearing? They keep playing that clip of Alain Vigneault over and over again from original training camp back in September. The show it clip.
Okay.
I think they came out with a show it attitude. The fourth line came out kind of like ready to show what they have and how they can contribute.
Whenever I think about that series, the only line that runs through my head is "Be a bleeping flyer."
Yeah, right. Well,
come on, man. And if you go back to that speech, he looked at that team and said, 16 teams are going to play in the playoffs. If only he knew.
Yeah.
He said, I believe we will be one of those teams. And guess what? Without even having to go through the qualifiers, he's correct. He's not even technically correct because they got in as part of the 24. He's not technically correct. He is legit correct.
Yeah.
100%. He is legitimately just correct about it. And man, I really got to go back and rewatch that series because I want to see how much he called, because he made a couple of little vague, here's how this season's going to go. And I feel like a lot of it's kind of come true, minus, global pandemic and,
right.
et cetera.
He did say something about this. He said something about the team being capable of going on. He told Joel Farabee, keep working hard. He'll be back up here really soon. And he was up in 2.5 weeks. Stuff like that. Yeah.
Play 3 games, score 3 goals, get called back up.
Pretty much.
As you do. But I really don't even know what to say. This team honestly impressed me beyond words. And I know that's not great news for a podcast, but I did not expect this team to come out and manhandle the Boston Bruins.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe the Flyers beat them. I know it wasn't the whole game.
Right.
But once they figured it out, once they knocked that rust off, that competitive rust, from the second period on, they really did kind of manhandle. And I don't know exactly what the fancy numbers say. Maybe Josh has something to say about that. But from what the eye test says, things didn't go well for Boston and things went well for Philadelphia.
Well, I think the fancy numbers would probably be a little smudged because of the empty net for like 3.5 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, well, I mean, Carter Hart's stats got padded big time because of that.
Yeah, and I do actually want to talk about Carter Hart because did Carter Hart have a 5-month layoff too?
Yeah, he did.
Because you could have fooled me. He
looked
really
day.
Good. He probably played a practice game every day because that's just how he is. Every other day he went right. He climbs on the roof of his house and does his little visualization thing. Like, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
Do you know what's really funny when you say that too? He did during one of his press conferences leading up to this, because he keeps reminding, like, everybody's in the same boat. That's kind of like been a line he's gone to a few times. Not that he's wrong. Like, he's just kind of almost like trying to sit here and say, stop overplaying the value that I haven't played in a while or everybody else hasn't. Like, we all haven't played. for a while.
Right.
Everybody's in the same
everyone's got
situation. At the same time,
Yeah.
he at one point in time during one of them said something about, so we're all just getting back into a game, like something about it'll be good to just play a game again. And he pauses and then corrects himself and says a competitive game. And I don't know if he's just talking about Tuesday or if it's like, hey, all these scrimmages at practices and all these other little things. Like, how do we know? He might have actually been doing something where once he finally said working, he didn't work out a ton during the pause, but at the same time, I guess whatever you do is you create your own situations where you work on those things. I guess maybe once they started to come back. So once he arrived during phase 2, when there is no formal practice, maybe they organize something where enough of them are out there at one time that they start to play these situations out. And it's like, let's just, hey, there's 7 of us here. Let's play 1 goalie 3-on-3.
Right.
And something like that, and do something that creates a situation. Maybe they do that. I don't know. I mean, nobody was inside the building for phase 2 activity at all. So we had no idea what they were doing. And at least there was a little bit of idea. I think the best thing I can say, or the thing I can offer here about Carter Hart, is Nate Thompson had a great quote today about him and said that, because something about like because obviously he's 21 years old. He's going to turn 22 in a couple weeks, essentially. And Nate Thompson said, I only have known him for a short time, but he doesn't look 21 to me. And then threw in there, he reminds me of a little bit of a goalie I used to play with in Montreal. He went there.
We heard that comparison a lot.
Yeah, we did.
We heard it a couple of times from the national team. And I got to say, give me orange tinted glasses if you want, but I'm in.
But I think you should.
I'm not saying he's there, of course.
No. I think again, he's got room to get better. That's the scary part. I think he's got room to get better, but at the same time, there are, from my vantage point anyway, and maybe it's the number of games I've sat here and watched Michael Neuvert and Steve Mason and Anthony Stolars, and also, and I don't even I hate to lump Brian Elliott into the group, but Brian Elliott sometimes, depending on, and a lot of it depends on who's in the mill
for a while.
Well, no, but it depends on who's in front of him. Don't get me wrong, because I do think that makes a difference. But at some point in time, okay, I don't know whether or not you would want a character, maybe it's either there was a power play in that third period for Boston at one point in time, and then there's the 4 minutes almost that they had with the net empty, right?
I would just like to address our Facebook chat real quick. Hey, Mike, if you have a problem with it, you schedule the next live show, bud. Sorry. Kevin, go ahead and continue. Mike's
okay.
Mike decided to, raise a stink in our Facebook comments, because I don't know if I mentioned it, but we're actually doing this show live on Facebook. So when it goes up as a podcast, you'll have to go back and find the video on our Facebook where
it'll be there.
You would think.
Oh, it'll be there, and it'll be on YouTube as well, right?
And it will be on YouTube as usual.
There you go.
I just realized I forgot to do literally all of the plugs.
All the plugs.
Listen,
we're hopped up. It was a 4-1 win. We're all
I had to play
up.
the theme song. I'm not used to doing that. I got to get this streaming thing. I got a lot on my plate today. Producer Mike has done 0 today. So,
all right. So anyway.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
I had to throw him under the bus real quick.
Now I got to try to get back to where I was with that before I was.
He's throwing bombs in the chat.
Yeah, I know. But I got to get back to where I was with that because I was about to say something about him. Okay. Well, so first of all, I do think I think we're only scratching the surface with him for one. And then I said, so Boston has a power play somewhere midway through the period. And then there's the 4 minutes almost at the end with the net empty. And at some point in time, you're waiting for the goal that could start the floodgates. And especially on the power play, you're watching the power play and you're going, maybe it doesn't even have to be one of the big 3 that we keep talking about. It doesn't have to be Bergeron, Marchand, or Pasternak. It could be Charlie Coyle on the second unit. And that's the one that, here they come.
It could be anybody flips on that team. Yeah.
Right, it really could. Yeah. And there was a couple of moments. Marchand had a great chance late. It was with the goalie pulled, and he made a save on that I thought was probably his best of the period to that point. And there was a couple others. There was a deflection from the point that kind of was going toward the right side that went back toward the middle. He got that. A couple moments around the front of the net. I mean, there was actually one of them where he doesn't even deserve all the credit for it because I think Sanheim got in the way of one of them. And you go, even that, they're selling out to block shots in front of them. They clear it out. You're waiting for one of those guys because they're all on the ice. Right. It's the same guys on the ice for Boston.
This is how it happens. We've seen this play before.
Well, not only that, but think about every single time in however many years back you want to keep going, because it seems to happen almost every year. The late goal that Boston scores that turns the tide on it, whether it's a tying goal, winning goal, under 2 minutes to play usually.
Brad Marchand skates out towards center ice doing one of these. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
We all know. We all know.
So and maybe that's what we've been put through with all of these other goalies who have come through in years past. Get used to the fact that this kid is as calm as it gets in net. And okay, so, honestly, he came out there and it was, so what that this is my first playoff game,
right?
So what, it's not different to me, so I'm gonna go play the way I usually play. And he just, I love that the stats were padded toward the end because he was so good through the first 2 periods. It was kind of a shame because and here's the thing. Even the one goal that goes in, it goes off a skate. It was off of Robert Hagg's skate in front. It looks like a jam play at the side of the net. He's going to tuck it in underneath the pads, and it went off his skate. So it's not even his fault.
That was a smart play by Wagner.
It was a smart play by Wagner.
It was
not only was it a smart play by Wagner, but there was a point in time as I was going through it that, and maybe you almost didn't have time to reflect on that because Myers came back so quickly and scored the other way.
Talk about that,
but at the same time, that was exactly the way I thought Boston was going to have to score goals in this game if they were going to. And for 2 periods, I felt like they weren't getting that, and then they get that goal from Wagner in that style, and I'm going, now they've got something, and it's a huge momentum killer because for 2 periods you had them off the board, and here it is, 1:09 to go, and that's when they get on the board. Get ready for a third period where they're going to push really hard, and instead you come right back down and answer with another one of your own.
Yeah, for sure.
So one quick thing about Hart that I was thinking of before we change the topic.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always down to talk more about Carter Hart.
I just one of the many reasons with the shutdown of hockey that I was just disappointed was how good he got, and I wanted to see how long he could sustain it.
Right. How much of it was a hot streak, and how much of it is this is just how good he is. Yeah,
because it's like something finally clicked, and it was impressive, and it was just a little disappointing because you wanted to see is this a few week thing, a month thing, whatever. But,
well, hopefully we're about to see it because
you know what? It's funny. That felt like it feels like it was a Carter Hart question and an entire team question at the same time because it was the entire team looked good, but a lot of it was Carter Hart. So if it's Carter Hart, then
who's steering the ship here? Right.
How long does he sustain it, and then therefore how long does that sustain the rest of it? That was one of the things that was so impressive, and I don't want to gloss over the exhibition completely here.
No,
but the exhibition was a really interesting situation because of the fact that you knew that there was something taken off in that game. In terms of the intensity, both teams very clearly played that safer than they probably normally would have. It was really funny because I think there was that game, there was Calgary-Edmonton later that night, and then I think Nashville-Dallas was 2 days later. And the physicality in the Nashville-Dallas game and the Calgary-Edmonton game was so much higher than the Flyers-Penguins game. And you're going, okay, so there's some teams that aren't looking at this like an exhibition. They're looking like to settle a score.
Right.
Yeah. But that was funny. But I don't want to gloss over that game for what for where it was, because even in that game for a decent stretch of time, they looked really good for an exhibition. And again, this was the first exposure we had to this team at all in 4.5 months, 5 months time to watch them in a game, to go from March 10th against Boston to July 28th against Pittsburgh in a game that doesn't count for anything to August 2nd against the Boston Bruins. And I'm not going to sit there and tell you they played a perfect game today, but I am going to tell you that they still looked the part of the team that was playing in March, did they not? I think that they still looked the part of that team in March a lot more than a lot of other teams can say.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that we look at this Flyers team and we can't tell who's the straw that stirs the drink. Is it Carter Hart? Is it Alain Vigneault? Is it Sean Couturier? Some would say it's Kevin Hayes. Is it Ivan Provorov? And that's a fantastic problem, heavy air quotes problem to have.
See, I think you answered the question, because I think there's so many that do.
Yeah.
That this is what the team should be. I mean, this is exactly what it needs to be.
Right.
So
and
one thing I was kind of thinking is, right, so like we're pretty confident about Hart, right? But what was the biggest risk really going into kind of the playoffs, like for what the Flyers needed for success? And I think it segues to who scored the goal after the Wagner goal. But I think it's that second pairing, right? Because I had more confidence in Carter Hart than I had in Sanheim Myers killing it as a second pairing, in the beginning and throughout the playoffs.
I think First of all, back on Carter Hart real quick. I did want to mention that I got a buddy of mine who's in our chat right now, and he's actually a lifelong Boston Bruins fan. And he said that watching Carter Hart today reminds him of 2011 Tim Thomas.
Wow.
And that's heady praise, and you can, take it for what it's worth there. That team certainly did have a parade. But I did want to mention
I don't want to go that far. But...
Well, no, I understand. But I did want to just say, I honestly think today's performance allows me to relax a little bit on the who's our goaltender thing. Right? As far as I'm concerned, today's performance cemented it in, and Carter Hart's the guy of the next decade. I know we were already 99% of the way there. We're already blah, blah, blah. This is just it for me, right? This
puts you over the top.
This is the stamp. This is the seal. This is Carter Hart. Philadelphia, you can breathe. You have a goaltender. And it's the first time you've been able to say that in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've said that a lot on this show, and we've kind of, blah, blah, blah. There is no more ish or we'll see or let's, blah, let's see how he develops and grow. No, he's there.
And here's the thing about this. You've got to, at some point in time, and I said this leading up to, at some point in time, because we debated this, Kyle. I think I remember last week we had debated this, and we said we didn't know what kind of workload we wanted to see from him. I think you said sit him on Tuesday, right? In the exhibition.
I
At
said
one time you said to sit him.
I did.
And just because of the fact that he was out of practice for a couple of days, and it was just don't risk it because you want him for this. And I even said I think splitting time was going to be a good way to go just to get them warmed up. And I said at some point in time you got to take the training wheels off on some of these guys and say it's go time. And take the training wheels off on him. I mean, I don't even know if were they ever on him at any point in time. I mean, they really last year they threw him in.
They weren't.
Well, no, but I'm saying they threw him into this last year, and he came in and actually looked really good, obviously, in the limited amount of time. And now you're seeing the full year. This is what the full year gets you. And realistically, this is the crazy part. He still hasn't played a full season yet. If we're going to go, I mean, it's a full season, but this is a full 69 game season, not a full 82.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, if we're afraid of anyone, I would think it would be the Lightning, right? I would really like to see him start versus the Lightning. And then, get somebody else Washington. I
mean, when he lost the game in March to Boston, I wanted him to go right, and he was apparently supposed to. I wanted him to go right back in against Tampa in the next game because, first of all, and this is going to sound really interesting in the way today's game is right now, because I wanted to see him on the road. I wanted to see him in front of another crowd, big time playoff opponent. Let's see how it looks.
Well, he was technically on the road today.
Yeah, well, very well aware.
His road woes are solved.
Yeah, how's that for a road performance? 34-35.
All we got to do is shut down the world. Carter Hart's our road goalie.
I mean, I gotta look back to see where exactly. I mean, he's played on. This is the thing about him that I've always talked about, especially as he came closer to reaching this level. He's been on stages like this before. He's played in World Juniors twice. Won a gold medal once, lost a gold medal.
Extremely well.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And not only that, but you're doing it for the country that pays the most attention to even that.
Yeah.
Hey, they get hopped up about the 18-year-old kids as much as they do the world championships and the Olympics and all that stuff when it's their team and, the best known guys out there. When Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon and Shea Weber and Jonathan Taves are all running around playing for Team Canada in the Olympics and everybody wants to win gold, they're just as hopped up with the kids that are coming up to eventually to take that step to the next level. He got on the biggest stage, lost 1 year, and came back more determined to be better the next year, and then was.
Yeah, and this playoffs will be less stress, right? Not in front of the Philly crowd. Even though he was better in front of the Philly crowd. But,
yeah, he was. But either way, I did want to mention that I've seen a couple early predictions for the next Olympics, and he's on there on most of them.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
you look at kind of the old guard of Canadian goaltending, and it's kind of time for some new blood there. And
you've also got to consider that there's going to be guys, and I'm thinking in the vein of the Carey Price type, who are going to sit there and say, you know what, I'm in my 30s now. I don't feel like doing this. I want the break. And some of them do. I know. And
I have a feeling after missing the last two Olympics, I have a feeling you're not going to get much of that.
Probably not. If it's their one and only shot, then you're probably right.
It's Carey Price's last shot.
All right, so
he's probably playing.
the guy I'm thinking of, and he's obviously not playing anymore, so it doesn't factor in. But if Roberto Luongo were still playing, and you've been to the previous one, and you've already won gold, and you're pushing 40,
for sure.
You're going to say, "I don't need to do this," and I'm going to take the time. And at 22, at that point, obviously, a 22-year-old kid like Carter Hart, because that's what he'll be at the time,
right?
Is going to sit there and say, "I want in. Give it to let me play, please." Or actually, he'll be older than 22 once he would actually go to the Olympics. He's going to be 2022, right?
Something like
the
that.
The Olympics is 2022, so he'll be
tentatively scheduled as of now.
Right. Well, we hope, right? I mean, I certainly hope that you can plan for that. Nonetheless,
his birthday soon, I think.
It's about a week and a half, 2 weeks from now. Yeah. And he turns 22 years old. But
one more thing.
He's the guy who. I think he's the guy who he doesn't want to stop playing. He likes the idea of getting into as many games, and it doesn't bother him. So if they picked him for an Olympic team, he's going to be all for it.
I absolutely agree. One more little note on goaltending before we get off it. Anybody else watching Alex Lyon's bubble vlogs?
Because I saw you send it to us, and I didn't get a chance to watch it because I was busy with some stuff this morning. Because
they're going up on Lehigh Valley Phantom social media, and they're 8 to 10 minutes long.
Okay.
And I don't know how much Alex Lyon content you've watched or done yourself, or he is funny.
He is a very entertaining guy.
Oh yeah,
funny. He has a job in hockey somewhere after his career if he wants it, for sure.
Yeah,
he is really
next to Bush.
Yes, he is really legitimately entertaining as hell, and I can't put it any other way. I want to see him do these literally every day for the hopefully 60 days or whatever it is the Flyers are in there.
So it cracks me up too, because the thing about him, he's funny. The other thing about it is that he's very well versed because he's got that Yale education.
Went to Yale.
Right? So he's got the Yale education. He's ridiculously, so he's insanely smart. He's very well spoken. Like he could easily do something he could easily do something in the media space, probably if he really wanted to, because he speaks very well about the game. And
he's in the AHL record book, so there's that.
I mean, Kyle, I think I told you this in one of the previous shows we did back when he was still filling in at a time when it might have been when Hart was out for a little period of time. So it was going back and forth, and he got a start. And the post-game media availability after that was the longest that I've had that we've had with a single player, and I don't know how long.
I buy that.
Literally at the end of the night.
Soaking it up, huh?
Well, no, he's just willing to talk, and he gives very detailed answers. I think that night I had the last question for him. So by the time it was done, because they started to disperse it a little bit, the only two people left in the locker room at the end of that was me and him. That's was awesome. It. And the clip on my recorder is probably pushing 9 minutes long, for one player. Usually they want you in and out. Like we did media after the game today. I was done in 25 minutes because it's here's coach, here's two players, Thank you. And they keep a time limit under wraps with it, especially when it's that organized. He was just going and didn't care, really liked talking about it and stuff like that. And I mean, so yeah, ridiculously smart, well-versed, funny, nice guy,
And he beat the Avalanche, right?
Yeah. That was the night I talked to him.
That's not terribly bad. Beating the Avalanche, there you go. But we did want to talk about some other games. As much as we are a Flyers podcast, we are also, kind of an NHL centric podcast here. Live update on the Avalanche game, by the way.
I keep glancing over to it.
So.
It's on the TV, not far from where I've got it within my sight line, so I'm looking over at it a little bit.
Since you mentioned the Avalanche, I think I figured I'd bring them up. But I do want to talk about some of Saturday's games because, oh man.
Well, I was going to say, what? You want to talk about the games, or do you want to talk about how our picks look like garbage right now?
I'm sorry, whose picks look like garbage?
Oh, maybe. Well, mine do. I don't remember all of yours. I didn't write all of them down in my notes because I was just making sure I had all mine on. I was on top of mine.
Other than Edmonton, I believe I am 4 for 4. On yesterday.
Wait, no. On yesterday.
In terms of picking,
I was going to say 4 for 4. There's
been
been more than 4 games, though, right?
No. The
NHL
The NHL knew what they were doing, starting with that Rangers Hurricane series, didn't they? 2 minutes into the game, we got a goal, and Justin Williams has dropped the gloves.
That
Welcome
was
to
the
the
last
playoffs.
thing I thought I would see.
Welcome to the
anything.
playoffs.
Yeah, welcome to the playoffs is right. That was the last thing I thought I'd see early in a game. Definitely the last guy I thought I'd see drop the gloves.
Mr. Game 7 figured Game 1 was as good a time as any.
That's crazy. It's crazy. I mean,
Playoff hockey does weird things, man.
Yeah.
We saw a lot going on in that game because that series, by the way, I don't think we mentioned it. Brady Shea's in Carolina.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned that. We mentioned Vincent Trocheck.
Oh, I know. I did mention him last week.
Oh, did you mention him? Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. You're
Because
right.
I did say there was a dynamic to that where he was under, especially because the other thing we were thinking about was Dougie Hamilton not playing in the very beginning of the series.
Right.
And I had mentioned Slavin being there, and I said actually the ironic twist is that Brady Shea's on that team.
Oh, right.
You know who? I mean, do you know who I forgot was on that team? Joel Edmondson.
I also forgot Joel
Didn't
Edmondson.
remember that trade
I was watching the game, and they're like, "Oh, Joel Edmondson won a Stanley Cup last year with the
forgot
Blues."
about
And I'm
that
like,
one.
yeah, why are we talking about it? Oh, he's on the ice. Oh,
Yeah.
You're right.
all right then. I guess we're talking about Joel Edmondson now as a okay, sure.
Yeah, I mean, so like I got off to an okay start with some of my picks because I do have Carolina in the series, and I mean, boy, can you get any better than what they did to come out? They score early. You get the energy from the hits and the fights and things like that right away. I thought that they closed on that game really well too, because I don't think they gave it was really weird to see the Rangers score a shorthanded goal at that situation late in the game. Like it really felt like Carolina was really going to just take that game, and it felt like it was going to be comfortable, and because it was 3-1 and they were on a power play, and instead it kind of gave you some closer moments at the end. But I liked what Carolina did, and here's the thing that really surprised me, because we talked about the Rangers goaltending, and Henrik Lundqvist was a surprise starter. He looked good. He looked good though.
He did.
He practically came
That's
close
not
to
on
stealing
that
that
isn't
game.
on him. Yeah,
Oh
at
yeah,
all.
he came really close to stealing that game for them. If they tie that game up in some way, who knows what happens. He was having a really solid game.
Yeah, he really did, and he wasn't the only goaltender to steal a game on Saturday.
Who stole a game?
Remember how earlier we compared Carter Hart to Carey Price?
To somebody, yeah.
Turns out Carey Price is really good at hockey.
That whole game comes down to him, because the first period I did not watch the game at the very start.
Okay.
I had a bit of a late dinner. I'd watched all the other games in full, and there was a gap.
You were just exhausted from
Well, no, but there was a gap, so it was time. Like it gave me time to step away from it all for a little and go do something else for a little bit. And I stepped away and didn't watch the very start of it, but I remember checking at one point in time just to look and see if there was a score. And there was no score, but I saw the shot totals, and I think it was something like 13-2.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned around and I went, "Oh boy, really good Carey Price showed up tonight so far."
Yeah.
And it's no score, and just and then when I found out that Montreal had the first goal, and then you go, there it is,
Yep.
There it is. They get the first one. He held them in that whole time, and there it is. They get that goal.
They
and
reigned
then continuously,
in the storm. Yep.
And it was really interesting because the way Pittsburgh came back in that game once it was 2-0, because I started to I kind of at 2-0 I went, Pittsburgh, something, get really good luck, because he's really on his game at the other end, and you're down by 2.
Yeah.
Good luck. And they got that first one, which, I think that's Crosby being Crosby at the side of the net, making a really heads-up play, knowing where Price was positioned. You got to give him all the credit in the world for that, for making that type of play, especially because I don't know. I mean, did it look to you that he was still not completely himself after missing a few days of practices and things like he played in that game on Tuesday, but Tuesday he definitely didn't look like himself. And I almost wonder if that carried over a little bit still. Like he's still trying to get some level of feel back to the game in a sense.
Yeah, and we see that a lot. We've seen that a lot over the last week or so.
We do, but there's a difference. But there's a big difference between, David Pastrnak maybe didn't look the way that he normally does, or Brad Marchand didn't practice on the one day, or left that exhibition early, so he was going to be questionable at some point in time for this game, and ended up being in the game, obviously. But it's okay because he's still got 2 more games to go before it really starts to be your playoff life
Or
is
it's
on
critical.
the line there.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I mean, we could have done that with any of the Flyers too. I mean, like, quite frankly, did Claude Giroux look like the greatest player out there? He had a couple good chances, but was he the most noticeable guy?
He had
Probably
a
not.
beauty off the post.
Oh, yeah. And I think that would have changed the way we look at it. Same thing with Sean Couturier.
Yeah,
Sean Couturier had a really good scoring chance late in the game.
If that goes posting in, you're not talking about Claude having a little bit of a mad game.
Well, no, I think you're seeing him have a contribution, but I don't think that line was the driver.
No.
I thought that line was the driver in the exhibition.
Yeah,
I thought they were the best line out of the four in the exhibition.
That was your stars carrying you. Yeah.
Ironically enough, the bottom six was what left a lot to be desired in the exhibition, and it took here's Couturier, here's Hayes, and here's Lawton all playing in your top six. There's your goal scorers, and they all factored in that way in the exhibition. In this one, I think your top line was less noticeable, and it worked out for you because the bottom six played better. I don't even know if I want to lump the bottom six completely together because I don't think the third line had the greatest showing.
It was the fourth line.
The fourth really drove, you know, and that was a big thing. So Pittsburgh gets those 2 goals relatively quickly in the second period, and I got this. Well, here we go again vibe because I got this here we go vibe because this is what Pittsburgh does. If once they get one, it seems like it all starts to open up for them, and they got the 2. And it was really interesting because something that I don't know if I put it in the text group or not, but one of the things I wanted to say is that through 3 days of exhibitions and so far that was the 4th game of the day, right, out of 5 that was on.
Everything hit the under?
No, it was the first game that entered the third period tied.
Oh, okay.
And I thought this could be really interesting because we haven't had someone's had to play protect the lead and someone had to play comeback in the third period at every stage of the way. And even though there was an overtime, were the Flyers the only overtime game in the exhibitions? I think they were.
They were, yeah.
So even though there wasn't a whole lot of that going on, there was, no team was entering. There was no ties entering the third period in any of those games, and it kind of was like, see how long it goes. And it did turn into that next goal wins mentality for both sides, and you started to sense it. And both sides
Both teams picked up a little intensity for sure.
Sure.
Did you guys see the stat on the penalty shots? It was like the first time there were 2 penalty shots since like 1923, something like that. Yeah.
It was ridiculous. And
one of them was in overtime.
One was in overtime, and they were probably 2 of the worst penalty shot attempts. I mean, I don't want to downplay Sherry's attempt because his is at least you're trying to pick a spot and he missed the net, but he did get a legitimate shot off. Drouin's was terrible. That was pathetic.
Yeah, it wasn't great. That wasn't Jonathan Drouin's career best effort, and that's really saying something.
But now
look excited though. Like he kind of like when he got the penalty shot, he kind of was like, "Oh shit!"
He's like, "Oh, I gotta take this. Oh no, I guess I have to take this penalty shot."
So here's the thing, Kyle, and this goes back to what we did last week.
Yeah,
I picked Pittsburgh in 4 in that series, and I said that Carey Price was going to steal a game probably,
and then it would go 5.
Well, no, I said if he stole game 1, it's probably going to go 5. But the thing we talked about after, because your counterpoint when I said that is that yes, because it's a totally different series now.
You only got to win 2 more.
Montreal is a third of the way there.
Yep.
And Pittsburgh now needs to pull off a 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
Yep. And Montreal only has to go 50-50.
I hope they stick with Murray.
I hope they switch every period and no one gets comfortable and it's terrible.
I mean, and here's the thing. Murray had a good game, all things considered. Like, honestly, he did all things considered because there were points in the game where I thought he made some really timely saves.
For sure.
And it could have crumbled, yeah. I mean, here's the thing. So Nick Suzuki had the second goal for Montreal, and it was prototypical how you beat Matt Murray. Go high glove. Every chance you get, go high glove. And it beat him high glove, obviously.
Yeah.
The game winner was a bit of a broken play. Because and really the
a lot of overtime game winners are in the playoffs.
They can be, yeah.
Yep. But it always works out that way.
But it was funny because I don't know if you saw this tweet that came out like a little bit afterwards. The damning part of the play for Pittsburgh was both defensemen ended up in the same corner. You had Jack Johnson way out of the play, and then Justin Schultz is kind of halfway there. He came across to try to pick somebody up, and the next thing you know, here's a defenseman who cuts in. Petrie cuts in for Montreal. And has that angle and has that space to get off a shot like that was just, a little bit of a toe drag and then go, put it high. And there it goes.
Attaboy, Johnny. Eat up, bud.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't think that kind of chirping
was
was going on in the preseason exhibition, whatever you want to call it.
there was a little conversation. There wasn't a
There was a
ton of
little
heat
bit, but,
between
I
the two
mean-
teams, but there was a little bit of.
It took until the third period for me to find a scrum, though.
For sure. And we
I was kind of
definitely
thinking
saw that
about
intensity
something
step up.
today, like just kind of about like this play-in, like for the play-in teams, because everyone's saying they're like, you know, these underdogs, right? No one's going to have home ice advantage. They're going to be, you know, fresh with some big win going into the second round. And I get the whole kind of momentum and play for your life sort of thing. But I was actually thinking about like how the Flyers are going to be playing these juggernauts, right? Or at least two juggernauts in the Capitals.
I don't think
And
anybody's
like,
a juggernaut right now.
Yeah, I mean, but they're deep, very strong
The Boston
teams.
Bruins proved that today. You know, President's Trophy winners.
Yeah, and I guess it's like, you know, any given day sort of a thing. But like,
especially now, more now than ever.
Really, especially now. Yeah.
I know I mentioned every game hitting the under before, but like this is a tough playoffs to gamble on just because there's so much going on. But I did actually want to mention that a lot of the exhibition games hit the under, and yesterday every game except for Chicago Edmonton hit it. And today,
do we really want to get into this one?
I mean, listen. Last week we talked about fantasy. This week we'll mix in a little. You know, we're not going to talk about it.
No. I'm not talking about getting into the betting lines. I'm talking. Do you really want to get into that game?
No. But either way,
no, because we were all wrong. Every single one of us last week is now completely wrong about that series.
Yeah,
we're wrong about a lot of stuff.
But we all set the stage for it too, right? Like we talk about Chicago and Edmonton. And all of us said Edmonton in 3, but we're worried about it. All of us knew that there was a chance Chicago would come out and do exactly what they did.
I laughed after the Montreal, because the Montreal-Pittsburgh game was the later one of the 12-5s, right? I turned around and I said, it's so fitting that here are two teams that are 12 seeds that everybody said had no right to be there, and they won game one.
And they're the dangerous teams. Yeah.
And they're now they're definitely the dangerous teams now because of the fact that now they have the little bit of the upper hand.
Exactly.
I mean, do I think that this knocks Edmonton out of the picture as much? Probably not. You know, Edmonton's got too much firepower and still showed it in this game. I mean,
all of that can also be said about Pittsburgh. They're also not out of this series at all.
Oh, they're not out of the series.
For sure.
The thing with Pittsburgh to me, though, is that the lingering effects of game one, I think, could last longer for Pittsburgh than they do for Edmonton. Edmonton's got, let's say, the irony with Edmonton is you're home. Realistically, you're legitimately home. This is your building. And even though there's a different dynamic to it, there's no fans there, but this is your building. And you're the only team that legitimately is home in that city with 11 other teams there trying to play.
And I'm very excited to see how the Leafs handle that tonight after we finish recording this podcast, by the way.
Yeah, and they're also
they're about to go live in a couple of minutes.
They're the 8 out of the 9. They're the 8 against the 9 too, so they'll have technically home ice at the beginning of it. I mean, look, they already did that with the exhibition was Montreal-Toronto, and they said that Montreal was using Toronto's locker room. It's like it's great.
We've seen so many good pictures from Leaf rivals. We've seen Montreal playing games in the dressing room. We've seen David Pastrnak with the big X through the Leafs logo. Like, guys are having a lot of fun with this.
People really like those pictures today. The Flyers tweeted out a couple pictures of their players. They were in the Toronto Raptors locker room.
It's weird.
But it looked weird. It looked pretty sick, though. All things considered,
it's very 2020.
Yeah, it is.
So
very 2020.
One interesting thing is that after the Oilers lost, they were saying in the broadcast afterwards that, you know, at least they don't kind of have to like walk around town, face the fans, go home.
They don't have to go out to that post-game meal.
Yeah, and it'll be easier for them to kind of shake it off or whatever.
I mean, that's probably true in a Canadian market. Yeah. In a Canadian market,
I mean, Leafs too.
Right, and these guys are all in a bubble, right? They're not expected. You know, Kevin, you talked about the media session being, you know, real quick, in and out, bing, bang, boom. You know, the guys aren't expected to be as available as they would be if we were in the playoffs or, you know, playoff adjacent.
Right, and it's really funny too because part of it, because I told you guys I didn't really get to watch the Robert Haig bubble the Alex Lyon bubble life thing because
he's pumping a lot of iron.
One of the things in the morning that I was on, jumped on to Bruce Cassidy's media availability in the morning because I was trying to figure out if we could get a name on a starter. And I'm just sitting. I'm not doing anything with it. I just sit there and I watch. But I figured I'll go on because at least it's like I'm sitting in the room, right? Sure. And he gives a start. But somebody asked him like, "What did you do yesterday, like in terms of it's a day when you're not really like in terms of how is the bubble life, like in terms of what you do and what do you do when you're not actually practicing or at the rink or whatever. And
Did he mention playing tennis?
he did not mention playing tennis.
Okay,
He said
because I believe Alex Lyon named him in that video talking about him playing tennis.
Okay. BMO Field is right off of this whole area, and they have a bunch of things. So he mentioned something about they had a way to watch part of some of the games in some capacity. I don't really remember exactly how, but they had a way to do it. At the field, it's on like I guess they have just like any other big venue like that. They have giant screens, and they were putting whatever game was on the screen so people could see it, which is a great idea. For the rest of the day, I don't know how it was because he made it sound like they had a little bit of access to it at the practice facility. I don't know if he was doing it like watching it from somewhere else, like once they got back to the hotels or whatever it is. Like it was really funny too because I watched both teams' availability yesterday. So I watched the Bruins first and then the Flyers. Both of them, I guess, had practice yesterday. I'm not really completely sure if Boston did. I think Boston did, but the Flyers definitely did. And both times you got hit with something I don't think you ever think you would hear before a media session, which is we're going to start in just a few moments. The team's bus is on its way back and currently stuck in traffic, so it'll be here in about 5 minutes. And it just is really funny because we even sat there and said, like, how typical of, like, the way that the whole, like, everything shifts that they're stuck. How fitting. They're stuck in traffic. You know, it's really funny.
And from what I hear, that's a fairly common occurrence in Toronto.
Yeah, it seemed like. I mean, did you see the way that just some of those outdoor shots where the way that stuff is just you can see a couple cars passing by the arena at different
There's a lot
times.
of construction.
There's a lot of stuff going on, and they have to navigate.
And we thought 95 was bad.
Right. Yeah, for real. But nonetheless, I mean, they are doing this very. You know, there's a system to this whole operation at this point. They go to
madness.
Well, there is because they go to their practice. They do everything they would at the practice. They come back, and they're like all of the media availability that does not involve being at a game is at the hotels. So they are in a spot in the hotels. I don't know if it's like I don't know if they have one room that they're all trying to use,
maybe
or if they actually have separated.
Floor, you know, something like that. One room per floor, one for each team.
Well, it could be, but I almost wonder if it's not because of the fact that it feels like they can filter through that part really quickly. Okay. They do have all the teams separated. I know that's part of this, that they, you know, this team's on this floor probably, and then this one's on this, and that's how they're doing because everybody's going to have.
I get the impression I've heard the term campus thrown around a bunch. Like I don't think they're quite as restricted as. I don't know if they're separated by team kind of during the day, like if there's not team activities going on. Like
they're not separate, but like they were, I should say, in the beginning because I think everybody when they got there on Sunday it was
tests.
Well, it wasn't that they're waiting for tests because they continue to test, and at some point in time, by the way, and I forget what day it was that I put it out there. It might have been either post exhibitions or maybe it was after Wednesday's exhibition, so it was almost through all of them. And they said, and they had that since Sunday, and this was going on Thursday. Since Sunday, everybody's been here. We have no positives.
Yep.
So everything's working. Mm-hmm. And I think the goal was that they were supposed to try to go 5 days and not commingle with each other among teams. Like if you were with them through phase 3, you're obviously going to commingle and you're going to practice together and awesome.
You're already all in the goal was anyway.
Not to really be, and it was funny because I think I forget which player got asked this question, but one of the Flyers got asked it and over the course of the whole thing and kind of said, we don't really plan to do that anyway. Like,
right. We're here to,
we don't plan to be here to hang out with guys on the other team. Like, we're going to try to make our own. I did read something that was really funny about the hotel life though today. I don't know if you saw this tweet or not, but apparently, it was Gord Miller tweeted it, and he's a broadcaster. He's doing a couple of.
Is this the internet one?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's 2 Wi-Fi networks at the hotel, one for people to use it like normal. Probably work, whatever, and one for everybody, like all the players who brought their gaming systems with them to be able to play. Which is,
hey, listen, you have a bunch of young 20-something athletes,
right,
who you're locking in a bubble.
Well, I mean, listen, we signed off last week.
They're gonna play Fortnite.
Yeah, well, we signed off last week, and at the time, we were sitting here trying to get a grasp on as the league was. We were literally sitting here talking about. What's the final roster going to be? And, they left for Toronto, and they're going to get there at some point. That was where we left everything, right?
Right.
And at the same time, we're talking about where that was, and we went, everything seems good.
We were talking about definitely not getting the roster.
Well, yeah, right. But we were talking about everything seems good. They told us no positive tests in the last week among everybody practicing in phase 3 and training camps. this looks like it's going to work. They're going to get everybody to the bubble with no positives, right? And that was where it was. And we came on, we also mentioned, well, gee, look what just happened or what was starting to happen in baseball at a time when everything was just going all over the place. That was the very beginning of it.
Yeah, baseball is
but the point, but the point I wanted to make about this is that you tell any of these athletes, you have this kind of time and you're not really supposed to go anywhere. Bryce Harper, who makes $30 million or $25 million a year or whatever it is on his contract, he's got a $330 million contract. What does he want to do when he's told, I got to stay home? I'm going to play a game. I'm going on Twitch.
Yep.
Sounds great.
And a lot of
that's
guys
all
do.
I want. And a lot of guys do.
I know Alex DeBrincat streamed a lot during quarantine. I know Mitch Marner streamed a lot during quarantine. I know there's a bunch of players who were spending a lot of time.
There's
streaming.
A number of Flyers who are big on it too.
Right. I'm sure there's more. I don't happen to follow, but I would like to throw out there that if any of them would like to play, my PSN username is KCollington856, and I don't even care if our fans know that. That's fine. Send me a message. It's cool.
Yeah, so, but I think the point I'm trying to make from the start of this anyway. So Bruce Cassidy got asked what they were doing, and kind of how they were spending their days up, and he kind of shrugged it off as if it was kind of just normal stuff. We watched a few of the games, maybe got over the field to play with. He goes, it rained a little the other day, so we weren't really outside much. So we stayed inside.
So it's already become the normal. They've been in the bubble for.
They feel very normal about it, which is what's really great about it. Is I think they view it as a very normal situation.
They better not get too comfortable because they got to go to Edmonton in a couple of weeks.
Well, they'll get
some of them do.
The Flyers sure do.
Right now, it's probably still new and different, right? But after a few weeks,
apparently it's not even all that new and different.
Yeah,
it probably is.
It's got to be an advantage for the East teams to at least go somewhere different, check out a new facility as opposed to just kind of the West teams just staying there, just mentally.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I guess it will be a little bit
once they change cities a bit. Well, and here's the thing: there's going to be a lot of the dynamic changes once they get everybody over there, because then you're talking only 4 teams are left total, and you're probably chances are you're going to cut down the number of officials that are needed. The
operation gets a lot tighter.
The operation could, by that point, we don't know if it's really going to happen this way or not, but it could get to the point where not only are they talking about go ahead and here's the 4 teams that are left, but go ahead and bring your families into the picture.
And I know a lot of players are hopeful for that.
Well, because by that point in time, think about where they're going to be in terms of this whole process. You're looking at over a month down the road. It's probably mid-September by that point that we're talking about this.
Everybody's fighting some sort of injury. Everybody's miserable.
Well, but at that point in time, the 4 teams that are left that didn't get to go home after this long stretch have been away for at least a month and a half, going on 2 months. Right. And now they're going to, and then at that point, that you're also another week and a half, 2 weeks away from it being over.
Which, by the way, last week, I don't think we spent enough time talking about the fact that Sean Couturier entered the bubble 3 days after becoming a father.
Right.
Because,
exactly.
We talked about him having a baby, and then we talked about them going into the bubble, but we never put A and B together. Well, he went into the bubble 3 days after becoming a father for the very first time.
Right. And then did you catch, how everybody else who we knew, who talked about how tough that must be because they are parents in their own right, had something else that they were able to post about during it? Right. Claude Giroux's son started walking this week.
Yeah.
And Brian Elliott's son turned 1.
Yeah.
And he wasn't there for a kid's first birthday. And Giroux already knows that that's happening for him as well, because
they're not going home that quick.
They're not going home that quick. Exactly.
It's almost good they're all just missing it collectively, though, because it's not like just one guy.
They can bond.
They can bond.
They're all missing.
Yeah.
And we have seen some stuff come out of the bubble of the teams put up some really nice collages of pictures. And Nashville, when all the guys came in there were photos by their bed. And all the teams are starting to do little touch of home type things. And I'm sure we'll see more of that as the playoffs go on, as you get a little deeper.
Sure. And they're FaceTiming. I mean, these guys.
All day, every day. Yeah. I mean, that's why that second router set up.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: you've got all those guys that we just mentioned. James Van Riemsdyk's a new father as well.
Yep.
Not far out from everything. I mean, I think that happened over the pause as well. I believe.
I was early on.
It was over the pause, and then you've got guys like Matt Niskanen, Justin Braun. These guys have multiple kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're all doing the same situation.
Coots said some real interesting stuff the other day I think it was before the exhibition game, right? About being an athlete and being privileged to even do this, right? Mm-hmm. Like 8 years ago, I was in Afghanistan, and I talked to my family every few weeks, maybe, right? Through like rickety old Skype, You know what I mean? And
right.
a lot of guys
2012 Skype
that.
was rough.
Yeah. But actually, I'll give a funny anecdote about that because that was the last time we won a playoff round.
Right.
So it was about a 9.5 hour time zone difference.
Right.
So I would
right.
actually, luckily, my mission cycle, I was able to wake up at 2 a.m. And I would have to walk about 10 minutes across this base, and they had this room called like MWR, it's like Morale, Welfare, Recreation Room, and there was a big TV in it.
Sounds like you got your money's worth.
and I was sitting there, and I think the games would start at 3 a.m. and I was sitting there for 3 hours and watch those playoff games against the Penguins and the Devils.
You're lucky you didn't get any multi-overtimes.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean that would have been bad for me because
that was something you didn't get too many of them.
It's fun. No, it's funny you just said that. That was something I was going to bring up about the Montreal Pittsburgh game from last night. Was the fact that was the first overtime playoff game we had.
Great.
Well, it was great. But what I was going to say is that the NHL really lucked out that the first occurrence of this came on the last game of the day at one of the hub cities.
It didn't bleed into another game.
Right. You didn't have the pressure of how long is this going to take. It was just go ahead and enjoy playoff overtime hockey.
Happening.
It delivered. It was good. It was really good.
4 hours, right? It's 4 hours.
Something like
in
that.
between.
Well,
no,
it's 4 hours between start time. So usually it's 12, 4, 8. And realistically, once you're done with a regulation game, you are looking at maybe. I think I read leading up to one of the starts of all this. Once they knew they were going to do exhibitions or whatever, when it operates that way. A game is supposed to, let's say it was a 12 o'clock game in Toronto today instead of 3. Right. A 12 o'clock game that ends at roughly
2:30.
Oh, I was going to go a little later than that because even with all the media time, so let's say 2:45, 2:50, in 66 minutes from that point, they're supposed to get them off. Well, they're going to get off the ice, have another warm up, and then and apparently – they're changing over board advertisements and things like that to make it to the home,
which is insane, by the way. Yeah, and it's split down the middle too, where east half is home team, west half is away team, vice versa. Like the NHL has gone to absolutely insane.
They've really, I mean, talk about leaving no stone unturned and every detail.
Yeah.
I do, however, want to address.
I mean, they're bringing in money still, so.
I do, however, want to address one thing. I don't think visiting teams should have their goal song played. I think
I didn't think so either. I agree with that.
Justin Williams came out and complained about it after the Rangers game, and I'm sure the Edmonton Oilers are sick of Chelsea Dagger right now. I don't think the visiting team should have their song played. Like, it just, to me, if you're going to do the home and away thing, if you're going to try to recreate home ice advantage as much as you can, right? You have sad Flyers fans on the screen after Boston scores their goal. Like, if you're going to try to recreate this home ice advantage, when Chicago scores in Edmonton, they don't play Chelsea Dagger in the stadium.
Right. So here's where I will go with this, because I'm going to focus on two different angles of this, because I'm going to focus on the actual presentation as we've seen it.
Right. And
then I'm going to focus on stuff. So I guess I'll start with the secondary point to it then, because one of the things I did while the game was on today, while the Flyers-Bruins game was on today, is that I wrote about early in the week when they announced it. The home ice thing that they were doing with the second screen that was kind of like creating a virtual watch party for Flyers fans.
And it was a lot of fun if you checked it out, by the way.
I thought it was very well done.
Really neat.
My one complaint is that I knew the Flyers scored their first goal before I saw it.
The sync is a little rough. Yeah.
It was good for the rest of the game.
Okay.
The rest of the game, it didn't do it.
I think because they probably knew they were too quick on it the first time.
Probably
did it when it actually happened, and they forgot about the 5-second delay. And
so I think they knew they had to pause a little bit, but for the most part, everything else about it was great. They showed the opening videos.
And it's the first time anyone had ever done anything like this, so you expect it to be a little bit of a work in progress, trying to port the arena experience over to a mobile device.
Sure, right. But to that point, if you're going to have something like that, hey, we created an app, a program, whatever you want to call it, that's going to create a virtual watch party, home or away team, then play the goal horn over that, because it's like being at a watch. If you were at Xfinity Live watching the game, they would have played the goal horn in the building. It doesn't mean that everybody else hears it, but they would have played there because you're at a watch party. You're trying to support your home team, right?
They showed that after the Wagner goal, right? And
there was only one Boston goal.
It was sad. It was a sad Flyers fan. It's like, what the hell?
Well, that didn't even tie in. That didn't even tie into the app. Like that was
No,
the
that was
same
just
thing.
in the arena.
No, the app
What
was,
was that?
from what I can tell, the app was a lot of pre-recorded
It was
stuff.
a lot of pre-recorded content that they were dropping in,
and some, I mean, some
Yeah.
live, but mostly pre-recorded.
Yeah.
it was
and
it was a lot of content that's been on the Flyers YouTube page over the last couple of months.
Sure, I mean, well, and that's what they use for like intermission gaps,
Totally.
which
Yeah.
I mean,
It
Kyle,
all
you've seen.
tracks.
Well, I would say, Kyle, you've seen this. That is kind of the typical game presentation anyway. Like,
Yeah, you
the
put a lot of
lead
that
up to
stuff in there.
the lead up to warm-ups is a bunch of the videos that they post to the website that is that filler material that was
It's
like,
a
hey,
lot
we're
of
showing
Andrea
personality,
Helfrich.
right?
Mhm.
And I like Andrea, but it's a lot of
Well,
Andrea
what-
Helfrich.
When do
Well,
we
it
see
was.
Lauren Hart? When do we see her?
Very beginning. She
They
did
do
both
her right at the
anthems.
beginning of the anthem.
They did it right at the beginning.
If you, well,
Oh,
we're
okay, so
talking
no,
No,
about,
I mean
no,
not today though.
yes.
Okay, no,
so what the Flyers did
Okay,
is
so
they created.
the Flyers.
Here,
Yeah,
I got
go
this.
ahead, Kyle.
They created an at-home second screen viewing experience where on your phone you can watch. It was on YouTube too. I know it was on a website, the PhiladelphiaFlyers.com/playoffs, but it was also on the Flyers YouTube channel. And they were doing a second screen thing, and Andrea was there, and Lou Nolan was announcing goals. Lauren
Did Pico
Hart sang-
power play? It was
Pico
great.
power play. Lauren Hart sang the national
okay.
anthem before the game, and it was all
I
live.
should have watched that.
Right,
Yeah,
it was all live.
Well, you have it on your phone while the game's playing. So
Right, so like I
when
have
the
a second
Flyers
screen.
score, when the Flyers score, boom, the horn goes off and the song plays through your phone.
Right.
Mhm.
Feel the Shake plays through your
Right.
phone, and it's
Now-
it was really cool. It
So-
worked really well.
Right. No, so to Josh's point, what I think he's going off of is that so the anthems played on NBC and the
Mhm.
Bruins anthem singer was the guy on video.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So I would expect Thursday, and I don't think we're going to get times.
I don't
while
think
we're
we're
here,
not going to get a time
because we
until-
don't know what other games are
know-
being played. So we need to wait at least another day or two.
We might not know
Um,
until Wednesday, honestly.
I think Tuesday, if it'll come down to how many they already know about.
Okay.
So if they can determine there's enough 1-1s that they can pick a few, then they'll
Right.
do it.
And they can always
but-
put it in an early spot
But
and then bump it if they need.
all right, but regardless, so Thursday's game against Washington is a Flyers home game technically.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if you see Lauren Hart on the screen for that because
Okay.
it's
I'm
considered
sure
a
you
Flyers
probably
home game.
will. Right.
That was it because somebody asked why wasn't the video like I think someone must have watched it using the second screen, but then went why was she not on TV? Well, it was a
Mhm.
Bruins home game, so that's where that came from.
Right.
But everything else about that was pretty cool and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The in-game
so-
presentation was great, mostly.
Mhm.
Which presentation? The
The in-game, even I don't even hate the crowd noise stuff.
The crowd
Like-
noise I don't hate. Do you know the one thing I don't like about this at this point, and I didn't see like the first
The
few games I
awful
watched-
chanting in the Nashville game. Did you hear that clip?
No,
Ooh, they did the goalie it's all your fault chant with like
They tried to
fan
do it through
video, and
Zoom?
it was bad.
Ugh.
I don't even think it was Zoom. I think it was like pre-recorded fan
Well, it's like
videos that they
pre-recorded,
put
yeah.
all together.
And then
And
no
it
one's
was
in sync.
it was very not good. The clip, if it's not viral yet, it's gonna be.
I thought what they were supposed to do was create Zoom calls for people like that, and then
I think they're
record them
doing that
all at once
also.
and like cue them and say, "This is what you're gonna yell at this time." Like, right?
I think they're still working out some kinks on what they can and can't
Sure.
do. You got to be
Mhm.
careful putting live video feed on Zoom just in case.
Yeah, you do. Well, see, I'm not talking about live though. I would have like if you're doing it for like season ticket holders,
Right.
you give them all a thing like, "Hey, we're gonna do this," and you invite them to this thing where they're
Right.
gonna get recorded. You put a bunch of them up at the same time and almost coach them into it, like we need it all at the same time, and do it that way.
And I think as we
You
get
know.
deeper into the playoffs, you might see things like that as teams
Yeah,
kind
you
of figure
might.
out.
I don't know. So-
as teams, slicking up their process a little
So
bit.
here's the only like the elements of the broadcast that I didn't like, and there wasn't much. I mean, the camera work is fine. It definitely works.
They got to fix Doc's feed.
Well, that's a big problem. Yep, that was one of my big gripes
It
about
was
it
a solid second behind,
because
and it's not his fault. It's just-
right. That's exactly the thing. It's a shame that here's the guy that we all love to hear call a game nationally. The guy who you know is going to be on the Stanley Cup final.
right.
Like,
Of
it's
course,
got to be. And all he's doing is worrying about his own health in the sense that I'm not going to travel there, but I still want to work.
Right.
So I'm going to do it from this little tiny studio that I have where I can do it. Then you've got to find a way to get him up to speed so he's not calling a goal. And
right.
now
I
here's
know.
now here
I
is
know
the
they-
interesting part.
Well, I know they have the players on a 5-second delay.
Right.
Is there any reason Doc we can't just get Doc in a little bit sooner and just sync it up a little better. Like
right.
Doc's got a 3-second delay, and that's what we need to account for internet buffering
sure. Well,
here.
Here's the interesting thing to me. I thought, if I'm not mistaken, because he called the exhibition between the Rangers and Islanders on, I think it was Thursday.
Okay, I didn't watch that one. Yeah.
And I didn't watch it closely, but I had it on mostly as background noise. I thought he was much more on point in that game, and that was one that was in Toronto. This was a game in Edmonton. I almost wonder if the feed from each spot. Well, here's the thing. 2 different networks are providing 2 different feeds. So if Edmonton's giving you Sportsnet feed, maybe there's some sort of disconnect here, because he certainly seemed to
Bell, something.
Well, he certainly seemed to be on top of the NBC feed coming from Toronto.
Well, whatever it is, hopefully they get the issue figured out.
Sure, I hope it does. So that was one of my complaints, because everything else, like in terms of the actual view of the game, I think the camera work is fine. I think the angles are fine. The overhead took a little bit.
The angles are great,
but the angles are really good. Yeah. I don't feel like I'm losing anything from the audio. I mean, like, are we hearing all of the players in their glory? No, we're not. No. But I don't think the crowd noise interferes with it in any way. Like, I did not sit there and come away with that viewing experience today going, gee, that crowd noise is really annoying.
They've done a good job.
I'm just happy we got here.
Right. So the area that I don't like is that they did it a couple times in the Pittsburgh-Montreal game. They got to stop trying to put the Zoom call looking thing of the fans up during the game. They need to
either get it right or get rid of it.
See, I know. I thought that I was under the impression that the way that it was going to be incorporated is that they were going to put that on in the arena for the players.
Okay.
To try to give them something. I didn't think it needed to also be beamed to my TV. Like, I thought that when do you know that like the camera angle that's off? I think it's the camera that's mounted on top of the penalty box that they usually use to show the players going across to do the the handshake line after a goal. Well, I can see the screens when they show that camera. I should be able to see the fans that you got to do these videos on the screen behind the players at the same time that they're going across. But I don't want it taken over my entire television.
Right. It should.
I thought that looked ridiculous.
Right. It shouldn't necessarily be on the screens. Right.
Couple quick anecdotes. It looks like Hart was the youngest goalie in Flyers history to win a postseason game today.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
That is very cool.
The other one, and these are credit to Sam Carchidi, and the other one is Phil Myers had a goal and led the Flyers with 5 shots and 9 shot attempts in this game.
Love it. I
heard his name all the time.
I think Travis Sanheim and Phil Myers, if the Flyers make a deep run, they're going to get a lot of fans this year.
It's going to be on them.
They should be anyway.
The deep run is contingent on them, right? Because Provi and Niskanen are going to be fine. And our third pair is going to be passable at best.
Right.
But
you look at your team and
those guys.
You need a good top 4. Top 2 isn't good enough. You need a good top 4.
Yeah.
When you start facing, the Toronto Maple Leafs where they can throw out Tavares and Matthews, and you start facing the Pittsburgh Penguins where they can throw out Crosby and then Malkin, you need to have 2 defensive pairings.
People are going to be more
that can shut down.
People are going to be more excited about these 2. Like we're saying, the deep playoff runs contingent on those 4 guys, like on that pairing being as good or close to as good as they were today. The thing about it is that people are going to like them even more if that's the case. If they have a deep run because they are playing as well as they were at different point, like before the pause in the game today, things like that. Knowing how young they are and how much of a future they have. I mean,
and the chemistry.
Right. I mean, the chemistry, we've talked about this probably before at some point in time, Kyle, but like their time back to the Phantoms, they played together with the Phantoms.
And they played great with the Phantoms.
And they played great. And then here they come. I mean, I think people kind of have that affinity for Sanheim a little bit already. Because he's been around a little bit.
He's been up and
Phil
he's
Myers
established.
Is the guy who is going to really capture people's attention. If he has a really good playoff, people are going to start paying a bunch of attention to him because
Who cut him? Was it Calgary?
I don't know.
From a training camp, yeah.
Okay, he was on he was on a PTO somewhere, and they cut him.
The year before.
Something like that.
Yeah, and he was an undrafted free agent, so there you go. I mean, well, and here's the thing, because like as we watched that, we were chatting throughout the day on the group text, watching all the games yesterday, and as that the Chicago-Edmonton game kept going. We were just counting the points for Dominic Kubalik, who was an undrafted free agent.
He had a fantastic game.
You
He
know,
really did.
Who only put up 5 points in his playoff debut. Now here comes Phil. No, here
first
comes Phil
time in
Myers.
NHL history too.
Yeah,
That was a record too.
it was a record for a day. It was a record for a debut.
This really is a historic postseason in more ways than one.
Sure, it is.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. So here comes Phil Myers, playoff debut, and it's not going to be that he's a defenseman, but solid effort in his second pairing role, and then scores a goal, a big goal that transitions you in. Right. He's got a great.
He normally misses the net.
He's got to get that on track a little bit, but he's got a good shot when he uses it. I don't think he overly uses it. His wrist shot is underrated. I think it's the slap shot that we see that he has a little bit of loss of control with it, but it's hard and heavy.
Was it 3 straight games with a goal? Or was it 4?
Yep.
3, right?
He had 3 because he had it. One of them was Boston previously. It was that other Boston game I was talking about with the first shootout in Boston. He had one there. He had one in Toronto, and then he had one against Montreal.
Okay.
Well, all good goalies, by the way, too. I mean, what was that? That's Frederick Anderson, and then it wasn't Tuukka Rask. I think it was Halak in that game.
Right.
And then
we got Halak.
And then Carey Price.
Can't complain about that.
Can't complain about beating 3 guys like that, and he's still going to grow.
You know what? That seems like a fantastic place to end it. I don't know about you gentlemen, but I am sweating and hungry. So maybe that'll be the title of this podcast.
Sweating and hungry.
Sweating and hungry, because that could explain a lot of it. Oh, we are very, very happy. We do not know at what time the Flyers will play, but the Flyers will play 2 games between now and our next show. They will play the Washington Capitals on Thursday. They will play the Tampa Bay Lightning on Saturday.
Yeah, well, we had thought about that. We had thought about doing this again next Sunday until they went ahead and changed that.
Then they went ahead and changed the game. So sitting here next week, we will know the Flyers record. I believe we will know most of their seeding. I think there might be one more game that Sunday.
Depending
on when we record.
Right. So I'm going to say I
think we're going to record before those games. So I don't think we will know where the Flyers are finally. We'll figure it out.
Well, we might or we might not, because there's one answer that will definitively tell you, and then there's one that will be a toss-up.
So we'll figure it out. If the Flyers go 3-0, we'll know they're the 1 seed, and that's all we need. That could very well be reality by the time our next show starts. Right. By the time we get there, before we do get there, make sure to follow us on Twitter during the games. We're at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. It's right there under him. If you're looking at us on Facebook, you can see the live thing there.
We're watching the replay on YouTube. It doesn't matter. It's right here
on YouTube. It's right there. We're at YWT Podcast. Kevin's at Kevin_Durso. He doesn't have at Sports Talk Philly or at Flyerdelphia up there, but we can be found there too. Josh is not really on.
I don't know. At Gertler Josh, I guess. I don't know.
Well, listen, if you get famous after this, I want to cut the royalties. You're not going to, but that's okay. And honestly, it was a really fun show. It was a fun game, and I am super, super excited to see more hockey. Playoffs are back. Hockey is back because it's the cup. Is that the hashtag? Whatever. Hashtag anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, that's the one we're going to go with.
And
hashtag bubble life.
Hashtag bubble life. And on that note, guys, we're going to get out of here, and we'll see you next week.